Alongside me, I've got my panel, Alex Dean, the political consultant, and Zoe Grunwald, the journalist and broadcaster. Welcome back to both of you.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you both. And each and every single one of you are always welcome on Jubes & Co. And you know the drill. You can join the conversation in all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me. There are lots of things that we need to discuss tonight. The whole horrendous situation that's been going on in Gaza. There's been so much discussion now as to what, if anything, the UK should be doing when it comes to recognising the state of Palestine. Well, our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has issued a statement on that. Let's take a listen.
I've always said that we will recognise a Palestinian state as a contribution to a proper peace process at the moment of maximum impact for the two-state solution. With that solution now under threat, this is the moment to act. So today, as part of this process towards peace, I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank. Meanwhile, our message to the terrorists of Hamas is unchanged and unequivocal. They must immediately release all of the hostages, sign up to a ceasefire, disarm, and accept that they will play no part in the government of Gaza.
Well, I can tell you, response to this is completely mixed. Alex Dean, what's your reaction?
What an absurd statement from our Prime Minister, who says, with a straight face, my message to Hamas is unchanged. Well, they haven't given up the hostages, and you've said, nevertheless, that you're going to give them a state. He claims that this is a contribution to the peace process. Well, it's not a contribution to the peace process. Well, first of all, because there isn't a state that you can recognise. But secondly, if there was one, it would be run by Hamas, which is a proscribed terrorist organisation. So the suggestion that it's on a par with its democratic neighbours or with members of the United Nations is a total absurdity. Any functioning organisation running the new state that he would seek to recognise is one that our government formally prescribes as a terrorist organisation. Some contribution to the peace process that would be.
Zoe?
Well, for me, it's that this statement barely makes sense. I mean, Keir Starmer says he wants a two-state solution, as do a number of MPs across the House in Parliament. Yet the conditions of recognising a Palestinian state rely on Israel's actions. The whole point of having your statehood recognised is so you have an inalienable right to self-determination. But if that is based on the actions of another state, it's contradictory.
That's fair.
It doesn't make any sense. I don't think that's going to please anybody on either side.
You either have it or you don't.
You do, correct. Yeah. And if Israel... if that is contingent on the actions of Israel, then there is no self-determination there. So it doesn't make sense. And I think there are many, many reasons why a Palestinian state needs to be recognised, not least because it will give Palestine access to those international bodies. It would be a step forward to diplomacy. It would be a step forward to them being able to access the ICC, UN agencies, and hopefully it would empower moderate Palestinian voices to help actually create a statehood that would work alongside Israel. But what we have now is something that it is contradictory. It doesn't help anyone. It certainly doesn't help the plight of the Palestinian people. And I don't know if it will put pressure on Israel, but I don't think so.
There is a basic framework. It's amazing to me that Keir Starmer was a leading lawyer, given that he is now giving way to his pressure from his own party that means he's doing this, I think. And plenty of his MPs think they'll lose their seats if it goes just a bit more than John Ashworth did, and I'll lose my seat because enough people get upset about the Middle East. Because he's completely disregarding the law on this. There's a framework for recognising states in international law, the Montevideo criteria. And they are, firstly, you have a permanent population. Well, that's not clear at all. Is the West Bank in or out? So, that's completely unclear. Secondly, you have permanent borders, recognisable borders. That's absolutely unclear. The Palestinian state would claim Jerusalem for a start. So you can't give them that one. The third is that you have a government. Absolutely not. The only organisation that's a semblance of running things in that state that would be recognised as Hamas, unless you're going to say Israel's the government of the new Palestine. And the fourth is the ability to enter into diplomatic relations with other countries. Well, that may come after, but they certainly can't do it now. So on the four criteria for recognising a state, the state that Keir Starmer wants to recognise currently meets none of them. And he's a lawyer.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GBNews discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GBnews to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Well, one of the things that I find interesting is the timing of this and why Keir Starmer has done what many people will call a bit of an about-face on this one. Jeremy Corbyn, of course, you all know the pressure that the Labour Party will be feeling, perhaps, not just from Reform UK, but now also from this new party, your party, or the left side, or whatever it's going to be called, I don't know. Anyway, Jeremy Corbyn, he's put a tweet out and said, Palestinian statehood is not a bargaining chip. It is not a threat. It is an inalienable right of the Palestinian people. Our demands on this shameful government remain the same. End all arms sales to Israel, impose widespread sanctions, and stop the genocide now.
But that's why it's stupid to do what he's done, because you can't out-Corbyn. He's never going to outbid Corbyn on doing more on this stuff. He's got to show that he's the moderate centrist. You know, who prefers the ersatz to the real? He can't outbid a party that's already outside mainstream politics on this.
But, I mean, Palestinian statehood isn't just something that's wanted by those on the left. There are, you know, the scenes that have been coming out of Gaza have been absolutely horrendous for a long, long time. But over the past few weeks, it really feels like pressure has ramped up on Israel. And across the House, you know, across the political spectrum, you are seeing people say, this is intolerable. We need a diplomatic solution. We need a ceasefire, and we need Netanyahu to stop his bombardment, his collective punishment of people in Gaza. And I think recognising a Palestinian state is a step towards that. It is saying to Israel, Palestine deserves a right to self-determination. The people deserve to have a government in there. Now, of course, Hamas is the sticking point here. But by giving Palestine access to these UN agencies, access to things like the ICC, you get a step closer to giving them a government that will recognise them as people in a democracy.
Who do you think turns up on day one at one of those international forums? It's a Hamas spokesman, right? And let's just, you were very generous, I think, in saying it's a sticking point. The Hamas attack on the 7th of October 2023 was the biggest loss of Jewish life in the world since the Holocaust, right? They raped their victims, they murdered pregnant women, murdered people in their 90s, they kidnapped people and held them hostage. Of course, Keir Starmer says he demands the return of the hostages, but you haven't done it, but I'll still give you a state, or recognise a statehood. Extraordinary. Those are the people, their leadership rejoiced in the suffering on the 7th of October and said they would kill Jews again and again until they'd wiped out the Zionist entity. That's who Keir Starmer wants to give statehood. someone who Keir Starmer wants to reward with statehood. Hamas puts command posts under hospitals. They weaponise food in their own population. They deliberately put children and civilians in the way of harm and then rejoice in that harm and video it for consumption internationally thereafter to capitalise on it. That's who Keir Starmer wants to reward with statehood. And it would be worse if it would actually mean anything. But the ultimate punchline is recognition isn't going to mean a thing.
But everything you've just said there is true. We've all seen the horrors of October the 7th. It is one of the most barbaric things imaginable. And of course, as you suggest, still hostages to this day remain. But, you know, despite all of that, the fact of the matter is, as Zoe has just suggested, we are now in some form of information war. And the images that are coming out of this situation, they are not looking good for Israel. They are not. And one of the challenges is trying to unpick what is Hamas propaganda and what is actual reality. And the fact that Israel can have had all of that horrendous stuff happen to them and now be in the position where they are now looking like the bad guys is astonishing. And actually, if Israel had allowed international independent journalists into Gaza to see it for themselves, to try and combat and push back some of this, what people are calling Hamas propaganda, they would be in a different situation today. Why wouldn't they do that?
I'm sure some of it has been Hamas propaganda and images being faked, and we're being asked to rely on the so-called Hamas Health Ministry, which is an arm of a prescribed terrorist organisation for facts. But I concede your point on two fronts. I concede your point about awful suffering in Gaza, who can deny that? And I concede your point about Israel denying access for international journalists. I thought that was a very bad decision. But ultimately, we're being asked to accept that our government is going to virtue signal by saying, you are a state, when palpably that's not true. Right now, the organisation that would administer this state is prescribed by our own country. And our Prime Minister makes no effort to square this circle, to seek to explain why he wishes to hand statehood to an organisation of terrorists. And the reason he gets away with it is, one, he's not challenged on it enough, but two, because nothing will actually change. There won't be a state of Palestine anytime soon, despite the United Kingdom saying that there is. You've got to recognise reality rather than your own virtue signalling, and he doesn't want to.
I can tell you, it's really, you're mixed on this one at home because, as you say, Zoe, and I'm among them, I've said repeatedly, I cannot bear to see the images of these children. I can't bear it, as any rational human being would feel when you do see these images. It affects you in lots of ways. The counterpoint to that would be, there was that recent image that was on the front page of one of the newspapers here.
Cropped.
Yeah, many people have now got in touch and said, well, hold on a minute, Michelle, because I was one of the ones that have raised this and been upset about that. People are saying, well, hold on, that was a child with a medical condition. The mother, she wasn't starving, and the other family members that were in the picture that have been cut out, they also were not starving. So there's a lot of pushback on some of this stuff, saying it needs more investigative journalism going into it. But again, that's very hard when Israel won't actually let anyone in to actually independently do that. But wherever you stand on this, wherever you're wanting to draw the line and to pick bits off pictures and all the rest of it, there will undeniably be children suffering, and there have been now for a long time. On the flip side, there will also be families deeply, deeply suffering with the likes of the hostages not being returned. This is a very emotional subject for many of you at home. Join the conversation in all the usual ways. I'll bring you in after the break.